Hello and welcome to Week in One, a wrap of the top stories of the last week. I'm Tutuzile Ramela. And once again, Parliament tops our week. First, the news that a deal brokered by Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and the opposition parties was firmly off the table. And then the parliamentary year ended with a bang on Thursday. The fireworks continued late into the evening, but did produce a result, Parliament voting in favour of a temporary suspension of EFF parliamentarians.
Those who abstained are 3, the noes are 111, and the ayes are 210. The motion is therefore carried.
After 6 hours of arguments, motions of order, discussions and delays, members of the EFF were red-carded.
We must go. Honourable members.
The National Assembly adopted the Powers and Privileges Committee report, which calls for punitive measures against the party's members of parliament who were found guilty of unparliamentary behaviour. The EFF MPs interrupted President Jacob Zuma's question time in August, chanting that he pay back the money used to upgrade his private home in Nkandla. The party's top brass, Julius Malema, Floyd Shivambu and Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, are to be suspended for 30 days without pay. 9 other members are facing suspension, while the rest will have to pay a fine and apologize to the House.
Now, of course, there were plenty of entertaining moments in Parliament. EFF MP Floyd Shivambu was not for once flipping the Floyd, but he did take on Parliamentary Speaker Baleka Mbete for a comment she made about respecting his elders.
Floyd, you are an African child, brought up by people I respect. And I'm quite sure you're not reflecting the way they brought you up.
This is a professional relationship. It's not a mother and child relationship. You're not my mother. I'm here as a member of parliament. You're a member of parliament. I must reflect and engage you openly and honestly without you raising the issues of culture here. We're not dealing with culture. We're dealing with parliament. We're equal members of this parliament.
Well, President Jacob Zuma spoke to ENCA this week about the ongoing disruptions in Parliament. The president told us he won't waste his time with people driven by their egos. Zuma made the comments during a visit to the South African Nuclear Energy Corporation.
Voters vote us to go to Parliament to do serious work, to be able to make laws, to be able to debate issues, to influence the direction of the country. Now, to have people who actually say to their voters, you send me in Parliament, but my job is to disrupt Parliament, that must tell you the level of maturity. Why should I waste time talking about those people? Really? Because we are in Parliament sent by the people. We are public representatives of the people. Why should we disrupt it? Because we want to satisfy our egos. What about the people who voted us to come there? People want to listen, for an example, to State of the Nation address. And they voted you to be part of it. You come there and say, I'm not going to allow it. I'm going to disrupt. Says, I mean, is that serious, really? Should I spend my time talking about that?
And looking at energy matters now, this week was a big one for Eskom, with ongoing concerns not only about keeping the lights on, but also their money woes in the spotlight. With the reserve power supply running dangerously low, Eskom says load shedding through summer is the only way to avoid a total blackout for the whole country. But at least one energy analyst believes it could take years of rolling blackouts to manage our power crisis.
Don't put those candles away just yet. Load shedding is here to stay. Eskom had to dip into its reserves after a major coal silo at its Majuba plant collapsed this month.
The problem is that these emergency reserves have been operating on a continuous basis during the working week. Now, they're not intended to do that. They're intended to be used on an emergency basis for short times only, typically half an hour a day.
It's become increasingly evident that the 10-year delay in the construction of new power plants is the root of the problem.
We haven't even got the first of the 12 units at Medupi and Kusile. They should have all been on the grid by 2008.
The grim reality is that blackouts are likely to continue for the next 5 years. So it would be wise to stock up on candles or ideally invest in a gas stove, solar-powered geysers and even a generator. Narissa Subramani, Johannesburg.
Now, South Africa's power supply is not the only thing giving Eskom sleepless nights. The power utility says its financial health, like its power plants, is under strain.
Indeed, this is a very, very challenging area for the company. The year up to end of September, we see that the profit of the company is under pressure.
The parastatal says its books are in bad shape, largely because of above-inflation cost increases, lower sales volumes, and one of its biggest revenue challenges, cost-reflective tariffs. The energy regulator NERSA slashed Eskom's proposed tariff hike of 16% to 8%. The power utility says this saw a shortfall of 225 billion rand. But Madonna says despite the compounded financial problems, all is not lost.
The company has embarked upon this challenge. We have put together what is called a business productivity program, which identifies savings across all the divisions, across all the expenditure items, from operation expenditure to capital expenditure.
And as Eskom prepares for a long financial struggle, it's hoping to do all in its power to keep the lights on. Muteo Khoripe, Johannesburg.
Now, these problems with our electricity supply certainly have contributed to the slow growth rate of our economy this year, but the latest GDP figures show that growth, while still slow, is on the up.
Africa's second biggest economy is still on the road to recovery. It grew by 1.4% between July and September compared to the same period last year. The economy is regaining momentum after stalling early in the year. A 5-month-long strike in the platinum mining industry saw the economy almost hit a recession. That industrial action eventually cost the country around 35 billion rand. Then shortly after, workers in the metal and engineering sector downed tools for 2 months.
We saw a strong growth from the tertiary side of the economy again. Government contributed, business services, the trades, and those were the industries that we've relied on heavily in the last number of years to support the economy.
The country's growth rate is not where government wants it to be, and given the major setbacks this year, it would do well to achieve the adjusted growth projections of between 1.4 and 1.5%. Mining and manufacturing continue to gain speed, while consumers are spending more ahead of the festive season will aid growth. Despite this, however, a lot of work still needs to be done to achieve a 3% growth figure by 2017.
Well, at least government is getting better at balancing its books. The Auditor General saying this week that several departments are making steady progress. A quarter of them have now received clean audits for the past financial year. There's still major problems, though. For example, the Limpopo Education Department is in such disarray that it was not possible to audit at all.
The Auditor General says while there have been major improvements over the past year, failing to follow the law is still a major concern. Of the 469 audits concluded, only 119 received clean audits, while a whopping 238 are still outstanding. Irregular expenditure total 63 billion rand, almost half of that from previous year, was only picked up in this audit. This is money that has been spent without following proper procedure. While the Western Cape came out tops with 78% of clean audits, Gauteng made the biggest improvement. The Free State, Northern Cape and Northwest showed some improvements in managing their money, while KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga showed very little. But it is the Eastern Cape and Limpopo whose books are in a shambles. In Limpopo, where 5 departments are still under administration, the situation is deteriorating to a point that the Education Department could again not be audited. In the Eastern Cape, irregular expenditure is on the increase, totaling 2.6 billion rand this financial year.
If there's no clear, transparent process that is governed by regulations when it comes to supply chain, we never know whether they spend more than what they should have spent or whether they did indeed receive all the goods that they ought to have received.
The Auditor General says Parliament needs to put tighter controls in place to curb irregular expenditure. Bonga Dlulane, Parliament.
You're watching Weekend One here on ENCA. The Palestinian president comes to town and a pop star takes on a puppet and loses. That story and more after this.